Do you have micromanagers inside your organization? Most companies do. In this episode of The Leadership Hustle, we'll give you some tips and techniques to help your managers become less controlling. Hello, and welcome to The Leadership Hustle for executives whose companies are growing fast and need leaders who are ready. So, we've got micromanagers. They're everywhere, right?
They are.
So imagine a workplace where employees feel trusted. They are given the tools and the resources to do their job. They're meeting customer expectations and the promises the company put out there. And we're delivering on all cylinders. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could find that place, right?
Yeah.
Most organizations do not have that perfect world, like where employees all feel trusted, where they're not being micromanaged, where they are given the opportunity to learn some things, to figure things out, to make a few mistakes, but still are able to deliver on the expectations of the customer.
Yeah. Well, and even when you bump into the multiple layers in an organization, managers, right? Level of managers.
Yep.
You have that middle manager who manages the supervisor, then that frontline manager. And what are the things that cause them to micromanage, right? Fear that they don't know, fear that they're going to look bad in front of the executive team or that next level above them,
right?
Because they don't have the answer, that they're getting the work done through their people, not themselves, right? But because of that, if they just let that freedom happen, they're not in the know.
Right. So I would venture a guess to say that most people don't think they're micromanagers. And if they do know they're micromanaging, they don't know how to get out of that. So let's just talk a little bit about what are some of the behaviors that employees will notice of their managers that in their mind define micromanagement. Okay, so what will the employee notice that the manager's doing?
Well, I think part of it is that employee will feel as if though they don't have a choice or say, that they have to do it how and when their manager says.
Yes. Like literally, I just had a client that he literally will give his employees an assignment, whatever day, say Thursday, and that employee will literally wait until Monday or Tuesday of the next week to do something because they know over the weekend that the manager will give them, oh, here's my ideas. So they literally are doing that employee's job or giving them the ideas of like, they don't have to do their jobs. It's like, oh, yes.
Well,
right?
and they've learned that if they start it, then their manager brings in these ideas 2 or 3 days later. And if what they've started doesn't align with what their manager is, then they're not going to meet their expectations.
Right. So why start?
Yeah. Why start? I'll just wait because they'll eventually tell me what I have to do.
Exactly. Or do it for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, one of the two. Yeah, for sure.
So what are other kinds of behaviors that managers do that employees see as and they interpret it as micromanagement?
Well, you and I have talked about this. It's that checking in. And I think sometimes that can be skewed for just wanting to make sure you're okay. But what's the frequency? It's that maybe it's too often. It's maybe it's comes out as feeling as you're being judged when that person checks in. So it's so
like behaviors like, are you saying like, so how are you doing on this project? Or where are you at on the process? Or
are you here yet?
Are you here yet?
Yeah, I mean it's how do you stay in the know but yet not have to
ask the questions all the time.
Yes, ask the questions all the time.
Okay, this is great because literally when I talk to managers, like, well, how do I stay in the know of what's going on? Well, there's 2 ways. One, you could ask the person who's in charge of the project, keep me up to date weekly on what's going on.
Set some expectations.
Send me those expectations.
That could still feel like micromanaging.
It can feel like micromanaging unless you explain why you're doing it. I need to know that we're still on track or that we're off track, or if you have any questions, I need to be, give me these bits of information. Ask me that, okay? Second is, there may be some mechanism where data is put into something, whether it's notes or it is project management system or things like that. So if there is something like that, put the data in there. You can access it whenever you need it. And then if there's something that you have a question on, questions don't equal micromanagement, but they can be interpreted as micromanagement if every single time there's something not good enough.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think, some of the things that we as managers and leaders do, like I said, we ask a lot of questions. We're doing the check-ins. We're asking where people are, or we're assuming that the person can't do something. We do it for them, right? And we do these things where maybe we unintentionally are just trying to be in the know of something, and it comes across as, you don't trust me.
Yes.
And so we as managers have to be able to trust people. So how do we help these managers trust their employees? I think that, there's the part that, because not only do managers micromanage the people they lead, coworkers micromanage their coworkers because of some project or something that is dependent on someone else to get something done, right? So the same behaviors are these checking in, where are you at, what's going on? And most of those are because someone is not keeping others abreast as to where we are.
Yes.
Right? Are we on track? Are we off track? Or they're not putting data into a system that allows somebody to independently gain that information and take care of it. Or they just do it because they don't think they do it good enough.
Well, and that one really gets into the whole micromanaging, because again, as we've talked about, is that a process or a preference? Is it a procedure or a preference?
Right.
And that preference is, if they're not doing it how you prefer, well, that's just your preference. And if you're going to push that preference, now you're pushing that micromanaging.
Right.
So do we have a very clear defined, this is a process that our organization, that everyone has to follow, and it's for safety, what's the reason for that process as well, right?
For sure.
For safety or whatever, versus this is just how I want it done. Because if it's how I want it done, now we're micromanaging, which people don't have autonomy or freedom, and
we're
feel
managing
like
expectations, right? And so when we're managing expectations, if we haven't said, I need it done according to the process, great. Or I need it done by a certain date, great. Or you need to put this information into the project management system. Those are the expectations, and when those things aren't done, now we start asking questions, and we start emailing, and we start formulating these opinions about things that are completely may not be completely untrue. They may be true, but we don't always have all the information, and so we tend to go to the negative, or below the line as we typically call it, right?
Yes.
Where it's like this blaming and protecting, and it's not my fault, and all those things that come along with it.
So the one thing I heard you say, though, is when we do kind of lean into the micromanaging, it's when we don't have clarity, I think, up front.
Correct.
Clarity of expectations. So clarity of expectations can be what it is, the why, them, what the expectation is they're accomplished, the why, them kind of scenario, the time frame that we need to have it done by, if there's any non-negotiables, and also authority. Because when we talk about...
And reporting process.
Yeah, well, that reporting process could be, that could be part of...
Deadlines and other parts of the expectations, right? And so, that's really the issue with micromanaging in most cases, other than the fact that there are people who are just wired to control.
There is, and I think you can have an environment that people feel. I think it can almost be conditioned from top down, where anytime someone at a higher level asks me a question, I have got to know the answer, because if I don't, then I'm failing.
Right.
And if I'm not in the know constantly 24/7 and I'm failing, then you're going to look at me as my manager, as the owner possibly I report to. We could be creating that environment where then now I have to feel like I have to be involved all the time. I need to be checking. I need to have all the information, because it's not that I necessarily even, I'm not going to say I don't care, but it's not that would necessarily be my default behavior, but I'm behaving this way because there's expectations that I know instantly, that I always have to have that answer.
Well, so
it's not okay to say, that's a great question, let's get Jim. Jim's the one working on this project.
Now, the reality is there are environments where that is true, and then there are environments where it's assumed to be true.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so it's like, oh, I don't know that answer. They're gonna look at me if I don't know, in a funky way, or they're gonna formulate an opinion about me that is less than positive if I don't know the answer. So now I am consuming all kinds of data and information so that if they ask me at any given moment, I can actually give them a question. It's like, no one can possibly know everything that's going on in every single thing in your department. Just can't. So, senior leaders, let's start there. Are you setting the expectation of what you need to know and when you need to know? Is there a mechanism where you can gather that information, where it is data, information, and if you decide, and when you look at that, if you have a question, ask the question. If the person doesn't have the information, do you give them bitter beer face?
How do you respond?
How do you respond to, okay, no big deal. When you get a chance, give me that information. I don't expect you to know all the answers to everything. It was just a question that I have.
Or bring whoever's working on this project with you, because we're going to talk through that.
Right.
So you've given, heads up, and so that person needs to, they know they need to bring that person along because they're the ones that's really going to have the information.
Right, because we may have a meeting and say, we're going to talk about this. So you're gathering all this information so I can answer all the questions. It's like, why fill your head with all that information? And it's okay to bring the person with you to bring the knowledge or the expertise.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So do those things. What other kinds of expectation, what other kinds of things can we do at the senior level, the most senior level, and then create that culture so there's less of a chance of micromanagement? Because there might be a little here and there no matter what, right?
Yeah, there is definitely going to be a little more involvement, because even if you go into personality styles, as the DISC personality style, that C style just wants facts and to understand. So it's going to be naturally for them to ask these questions because they just want more information. That's really what they want. When thinking about that environment, oftentimes we reward people because they're really good at their job and they're experts at X, Y, Z, right?
Right.
So they're experts at X, Y. They know everything. That you ask questions, they're on top of it, and they can explain everything. Now they're rewarded and promoted as a manager. So they believe what they got rewarded for, that their expertise and knowledge
rewarded gets repeated, right? So you keep doing it.
Correct. And so when you think about that leadership team, what are we doing to help transition our people from who was once an individual contributor and a really good one?
A technical expert.
Yes, that technical expert who now maybe manage it. We're now going to promote them and reward them because they're great, but now they're managing 5 different technical experts. Right. And maybe they were only a technical expert of 2 of those 5, which now probably really creates some fear. Right? Because I'm managing 3 other people that I don't even know what they do. Well, you don't have to know what they do. They have to know what they do. But creating an environment that helps them transition from that one being that expert to now leading people that are different experts.
Right.
And creating clarity that the expectation of what those expectations are. And it's not that they're the expert of all 5 things.
Right.
That they need to bring along that they're experts.
So we've been talking about managers, and I know that this podcast is really about managers, but we are also getting people asking us questions. How do I manage a managing coworker?
Oh, yes.
So it could be manager peer-to-peer, or it could be an individual contributor being micromanaged by another individual contributor. And so, it
could be people on the executive teams.
It could be people on the executive team. Where are we with that? Where are we with that? Are you done with that? Have you taken care of that? And it's just like, oh my gosh, get off my back, right?
Yes.
And so I don't think that the techniques are that much different has there been clear expectations set up in the beginning?
How we work together.
How do we work together? Or when is this project due? Or what do you need from me? So let's just use, it doesn't make any difference which coworkers we're talking about. Somebody's asked you for something. Okay, great. No one has given me a deadline or a target date, so that's missing. Without a deadline or target date, I guarantee you somebody's going to be disappointed.
Yeah, someone's going to be disappointed.
Right?
It's gray.
So you always need a deadline or a target date or a timeline that gives when is expected to be completed or things like that. if there are milestones, what milestones do you both agree upon, and what is the sharing mechanism, or what is the inspection?
Communicate.
Exactly. Where is that information being housed? Is it simply an email back and forth, or is it going into a project management system or a CRM or something else where I can go look and see and pick it up and take on my next step versus
without calling someone
and adding another freaking email.
Or that too, yeah.
I mean, we just had an episode on how do we help our managers become better. It's like quit taking up their time and filling their inbox with completely unnecessary emails.
Yes. And it goes back to your communication strategy. What is our communication strategy so we can work effectively together? What are your expectations of my department?
Right.
Say we're 2 directors. What are the expectations of this department versus the expectations of your department? How we work together, how we follow up. If we're working on something, what's the time frame? And depending on what it is this something that there's different types of communication that we can go look at and look for versus having to always reach out?
So, true story. We happen to work with a company that provides services in homes. And so we have staff in the homes of people who live there. And I asked the group of direct line staff and managers, if any of them micromanagers. No, we don't micromanage. I said, okay. How many of you change how the dishwasher is loaded?
Sorry. So now I'm micromanaging at home, by the way.
Right? Or how many of you rearrange how the towels are folded because they don't like how the towels are folded? Truly, when you do that, that's micromanaging because it's a preference over a policy.
Yes.
When you start thinking about that, like, I don't micromanage until you realize that you want your towels folded in thirds instead of quarters, or that you don't want any pans on the top rack of the of the dishwasher, or whatever the preference is. So the reality is there are things that we have preferences on, but in the scheme of things, the dishwasher still gets loaded and the towels will still dry the body.
Yes.
Okay? They will still be fine.
They'll accomplish the need.
They will accomplish the need. And so when we start looking at the things that we do as coworkers, as peers, as leaders and managers of other people, I want you to stop and explain. Make sure that when you are setting the expectation that there is an agreed upon expectation and that you're not going overboard from a preference to a procedure.
Yeah.
Okay? We don't need to proceduralize every single thing.
Have freedom.
With the exception of those things that are emergencies. Like my pilot better follow the procedures, okay?
Yes. There needs to be procedures for safety and quality.
Yes.
And how to maximize.
Those are very specific expectations.
But there needs to be autonomy and freedom to get things done how I prefer to do it versus how you prefer to do it, as long as we get the end result.
Exactly.
And that micromanaging is when you get into the weeds and the details before you get to the end result. And it's like, just let them get to the end result.
Right. And if at the end you have to rearrange the dishwasher, you're doing somebody else's job for them, right?
Yeah, you're not being productive.
It's not your high payoff activity.
No, that's not productive.
So, so this micromanaging thing is really actually an epidemic. I mean, we have it peer-to-peer, we have it manager to employee, and the real solution to this is setting clear expectations and making sure that we're managing the expectations of process over preference, and just keeping people abreast and realizing that the other person's really trying to do a good job on both sides of this conversation.
Yes, I believe both are having good
intentions are good. We're trying to do the best we can. They're not trying to make your life miserable. They're truly just trying to get their work done.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Leadership Hustle. Please subscribe so you never miss another episode.